If you were tuned into the Myspace buzz all the way back in 2004, you'll remember the hype around Saosin. Their debut EP, Translating the Name, had just set the emo world on fire, and everyone was going crazy for the hot new band from Orange County, California. Saosin were the next big thing. Their melding of melody, aggression, and unique vocals became a perfect storm of everything that was so awesome about post-hardcore in the new millennium. But then, everything fell apart. It all came down to one decision. One decision that set in motion a chain of events that would change everything and shape the future of emo and post-hardcore for decades to come. The Saosin story began in 2003, when Bo Burchell, Justin Tchaikovsky, Zach Kennedy, and Anthony Green got together to form a band. Taking their name from a vague approximation of the Chinese word for take care or be careful, Saosin set about writing their debut release. Working with Death Do Us Part Records, they put together the Translating the Name EP in 2003, a record that had 5 songs, around 15 minutes of music, and a seismic impact on the scene. Death Do Us Part was not a big label, but this was 2003, and the age of social media was dawning. The band developed a huge following on Myspace, and soon everyone knew that this was the band of the moment. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Bassist Zach Kennedy left the band while the EP was being recorded, deciding to focus on art rather than music. Alex Rodriguez had been signed as Saosin's drummer, but he had recording commitments with his old band Open Hand. Fortunately, new bass player Chris Sorensen had been drum tech for Slayer, so he was able to fill in behind the kit. These were pretty minor issues though. Translating the Name is a stunning EP and introduced the world to Saosin in a big way. This band had everything: talent, hype, and now major label interest. But a huge schism was just around the corner. In 2004, Saosin had the world at their feet. They held all the cards. Major labels had fallen in love with the music they were making. It wasn't so much a case of if Saosin would sign to a major, it was more which major they would choose. But then lead vocalist and lyricist Anthony Green dropped a bombshell. In February 2004, Green said he would be leaving Saosin. This was a talented band, and every member made their own unique contribution. But Green was such a core part of their sound with his distinctive vocal style and smart, incisive lyrics. If Green left, then surely Saosin was over. So what was it all about? What had gone wrong? Immediate speculation suggested creative differences. The band was still in its infancy with just one EP to their name. As they looked towards writing their debut album, Green wanted to push the band in one direction. His bandmates wanted to go in another. The differences were irreconcilable, and Green found he had no option but to leave. But the truth was darker than this, and much sadder. While the band were from California, Anthony Green was not. He was from Pennsylvania, on the other side of the country. On the West Coast, he felt homesick and isolated, despite being the focal point for the hype band of the moment. These feelings made his existing mental health problems worse, and pushed Anthony into a pretty dark place. As major labels circled the band, the pressure grew too much for the singer. Fearing that he was losing control, both of his music and of himself, he decided to quit. "I wasn't ready for what was happening," he would say later. "I didn't want to be controlled, and the thought of being away from home terrified me." So Green was gone, and now Saosin had a choice to make. They could just give up, collapse, fade away, or they could rebuild. But if they were going to do the latter, first they'd need to overcome a huge hurdle: replacing Anthony Green. As you might expect, finding a new vocalist wasn't easy. They auditioned a bunch of different people and recorded demos with future Greek Fire singer Philip Sneed. But then they received a demo tape sent by an unknown singer, Cove Reber, a pizza delivery guy from California. This tape changed everything. Cove was only 19 years old, but this didn't matter. The rest of Saosin were only a few years older, and anyway, it was his attitude that mattered. Saosin called a halt to the audition process. They'd found their guy. Reber fit in straight away. Heading out on the Taste of Chaos tour in 2005, Saosin introduced their new vocalist to fans. And these fans loved Reber. Saosin had been right to the brink of destruction, but now they were back with a complete lineup. A lineup ready to make good on those early promises. Signing with Capitol Records, Saosin released their self-titled EP to huge acclaim. After touring with Avenged Sevenfold and Coheed and Cambria, the band began to work on their debut LP. The self-titled Saosin album dropped in September 2006, more than 3 years after the Translating the Name EP. To say the band were a bit behind schedule is an understatement. Saosin had been the next big thing for years, and were only just releasing their debut album. But I guess losing your lead singer and main lyricist is gonna do that to a band. Fortunately, the album got them right back on track. It really lived up to the hype. Tracks like Voices and You're Not Alone had gone down in history as archetypal slices of mid-2000s emo, benchmarks against which all other emo tracks can be judged. Saosin had graduated from scene hype band into real emo contenders in just a few years. Off the back of their debut album, they toured with the likes of Poison the Well, Alexis on Fire, The Bled, Armor for Sleep, and even Linkin Park. Outwardly, the band looked like they were going from strength to strength. But their rapid rise to fame had taken its toll, and the band members were running on empty. Releasing a second album is difficult for most bands, especially if the first one has been a big success. There's just so much pressure to sell records, and pressure to stay true to your art. This was the tricky situation Saosin encountered in late 2008 as they got together to record In Search of Solid Ground. But as they prepared to release the second record, things got off to a bad start. First, they teased the cover art for the album, a strange image featuring a semi-naked woman melded with the trunk and branch of a tree. Fans didn't love it, and so the artwork got dropped in favor of something a little less out there. But of course, it's the music that matters. Unfortunately, that was a little lukewarm too. Don't get me wrong, there are great tracks here, like the pop-punk emo of Is This Real, or the haunting alt-rock of Changing. But it felt like a bit of a missed opportunity. It was like Saosin had had the chance to build on the platform they've made for themselves. And instead, they'd made the album Virgin told them to make. An album that was gonna sell records without really pushing the genre forwards. It certainly did sell. Saosin's eagerly awaited sophomore album rode high in the charts and sold plenty of copies. But the guys were left feeling a little hollow, so they decided to take back control. They split with Virgin and announced they were heading in a more DIY direction. But almost immediately, this new approach ran into difficulty. First of all, Cove was struggling. For one reason or another, he just wasn't hitting all the notes during live performances. The band was putting so much effort into recording tracks for audiences to vibe with, and those tracks were just falling flat up there on the stage. With a heavy heart, the band parted ways with their singer. But now, what was going to happen to the band? Fans worried that losing Cove was just the beginning. The band that had come so close to extinction a few years before was now about to fall apart completely. Burchell tried to ease those fears. A new album was on the way, he said. Everyone, stay calm. But who was going to sing on this album? Some believed Charles Fernie of Secret and Whisper was going to become the next Saosin vocalist. Others believed the job belonged to Tillian Pearson, vocalist with Tides of Man. In fact, Pearson did end up quitting Tides of Man, basically confirming the news. When leaked demos emerged with Pearson's voice on them, fans were sure Saosin had their man. It turned out this wasn't the case. The demos were just something Chris Sorensen had been working on. Saosin had no new singer. They didn't really have any new music to release either. Now they were in danger of drifting away from a changing scene. If they weren't careful, fans were going to forget them altogether. While all this was going on, Anthony Green wasn't sitting idle. After leaving Saosin, he'd met up with his old friend Colin Frangisetto and started recording some tracks that were a little more low-key. Freed from the pressure and stress of Saosin, Green found himself with a new lease of artistic life. And with Frangisetto, he had a partner who got what he was trying to do. After reaching an agreement with Equal Vision, the duo started building a brand. With Brendan Ekstrom on lead guitar, Nick Beard on bass, and Steve Clifford on drums, Circa Survive was born. The alternate timeline of Circa Survive began to unfold rapidly. In 2005, the band released the Inuit Sessions EP, with future fan-favorite track Act Appalled on it. Fans eager for more didn't have to wait long. Juturna, the band's first full-length, was released in April on Equal Vision Records. While the band were keen to stress, Juturna wasn't a concept album. there are definite thematic threads running through the record. Movies like House of Leaves and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind certainly seem to have influenced the record. And what a record it is, by the way. The album has rightly gone down as one of the most influential post-hardcore releases of the 2000s, largely thanks to its rich palette of cultural references, from post-rock bands like Silver Mount Zion to art-pop legends like Bjork. Circa Survive would release another record on Equal Vision, 2007's On Letting Go, before signing with major Atlantic. The band's one and only full-length record on Atlantic was Blue Sky Noise, released in 2010. While the album wasn't a mainstream smash, it scored rapturous reviews from critics, who praised the scope and depth of its artistry. Circa Survive had basically achieved what Saosin never quite managed to do. They had stability, they had respect, and they had artistic freedom. It's not that Saosin weren't a huge deal on the post-hardcore scene. They certainly were. It's just that Circa Survive seemed more confident, more assured. Like they'd just had everything together in a way that Saosin didn't. So when Circa Survive decided to go it alone, without a label, no one was really surprised. They could basically do anything they wanted, and make it work. They recorded their fourth album, Violent Waves, in just over a week in the spring of 2012, handling most of the production work themselves. Then the album, featuring guests like Rachel Minton of Zoloft the Rock and Roll Destroyer and Jeff Rickley of Thursday, was released to yet more acclaim that August. Circa Survive was a band that could do no wrong, and while their fifth album, Descensus, wasn't quite the same critical success as the previous records, it didn't matter. The group had cemented their place as one of the best post-hardcore bands of their age. Maybe of all time. While Circa Survive was blowing up, Anthony Green had not forgotten about his old friends in Saosin. And in fact, his success with Circa Survive had given him an aura of almost zen-like calm. While the singer had struggled with stress and anxiety before, now he felt ready to take on more responsibility and help his old brothers out. In 2012, Green performed on stage with Bo Burchell and Justin Tchaikovsky. It was the first time the guys had played music together since Green's departure 8 years before. But no one thought too much of this. It was just old friends hanging out, nothing more. 2 years later, though, Saosin announced their first tour since 2010. And guess who was on vocals? Anthony Green. Not only that, but they were writing a new album. Maybe everything was going to work out. Tchaikovsky left the band in 2015. The longtime guitarist had been with Saosin for 13 years, but his move to the Used left the lead guitarist position open. This position was filled by Phil Scrosso of As I Lay Dying, who was looking for a new band after AILD singer Tim Lambesis got locked up for solicitation of murder. The long-awaited third album was released through Epitaph Records in May 2016. Entitled Along the Shadow, the record climbed fairly high in the charts and scored some pretty solid reviews from critics. Amazingly, even though Anthony Green was one of the founding members of the band, this third album was the first to feature the original singer on vocals. So now Green was back in the fold. Surely, all was forgiven. The decision he'd made back in 2004 had brought the band to its knees, but now the old wounds were healed. Surely, Saosin were back on track to be the world-beating emo titans they were always supposed to be. I'd love to tell you this is the case, but it's not. And here's why. Firstly, Green had done awesome things with Circa Survive. He wasn't just going to turn his back on all that. Circa Survive not only remained together, but they have released 2 more albums since Green returned to Saosin, 2017's The Amulet and 2022's Two Dreams. Saosin might have their original vocalist back, but they'd have to come to terms with the fact that he was still a part of Circa Survive. Secondly, there's the small matter of Cove Ribber. Cove might not have been a Saosin OG, but he was a key part of their sound on those first 2 LPs. His contribution to the band can't be ignored. This has led to some slightly awkward moments. For example, when Saosin toured Australia in 2023, they billed the tour as All the Hits, All the Albums, but they only played songs that featured Anthony Green. Plenty of fans felt pretty shortchanged over this, and some even accused them of false advertising. So Saosin are still together, still touring and still planning to release records. But as for who the actual singer is, no one seems 100% sure. Both Circa Survive and Saosin have earned their legacies as scene legends, and both bands are still together. although only Saosin are currently active. Circa Survive, on the other hand, went on hiatus in 2022. I still expect we'll hear more from them in the future though. So what's going on with Saosin? Well, that's hard to say. A few times the members have referred to themselves as member fluid, without a definitive lineup. They're kind of like Schrodinger's emo band. The only answer to the question, is Cove Ribber or Anthony Green the singer in Saosin, is yes. Both Cove and Anthony still sing in the band. Sometimes they appear together, sometimes separately. I guess when fans are turning up to shows in search of a greatest hits set, they're hoping to get a double dose of Saosin singer action. As for recording, there's supposed to be an album on the way. Apparently, Cove Ribber is going to be the singer on this. And this would make sense, as Anthony Green has been busy with MCR's Frank Iero on their LS Dunes project. But we'll have to wait and see. The only thing we know for sure is that Saosin are survivors, and they're still here. Green's decision, taken more than 20 years ago, impacted the next 2 decades of the band's story. But crucially, it did not kill the band. And for that, we should be thankful. So now it's your turn. Who do you prefer, Saosin or Circa Survive? Or indeed, Cove Ribber or Anthony Green? And did Green's departure really knock the wind out of Saosin's sails? Or did it help them to evolve into the weird and wonderful hybrid band they are today? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and if you're in the mood for more wild tales from the pop punk and emo vaults, stay right where you are, because there's another one coming your way.